Joe Hanna, Nick Sertis, and Nils Koerber. So come on up, gentlemen. You need to sit underneath in this order, please. Joe, Nick, Nils. Okay, just so we can see who you are on the screen aligned. Now, what we thought we would do in this whole AI panel area, and it's such a broad topic, AI, and how it can be applied. So in thinking about what it really means, I thought it would be interesting to dive around a few elements. Mm-hmm. One is around what it means from an internal perspective for anyone operating in the PropTech industry, and the second is from an external perspective, projecting out. What's it mean for dealing with customers, dealing with advertisers, and so on. So that's sort of the broad way we're going to structure this. But before diving in deep, I thought it'd be good to introduce yourselves. Okay, so why don't we start with Nils?
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, I'm Nils. Came all the way from Cape Town in South Africa. I work for a company called Ringier, which is a Swiss media group. We run a couple of marketplaces. And I'm the managing director for Ringier South Africa, which is a tech hub. So I'm a techie, I'm a software engineer. That's what I did my whole life.
Okay, thank you. Nick?
Yeah, I'm Nick Sertis, managing director and co-founder of Signify Media. We have a product, Looper Automate, which essentially automates listings off network across a broad range of channels. Founded that about 8 years ago, and working with a lot of people in the room, but a lot of others as well around the world.
Okay, and Joe.
And Joe Hanna, partner at Fusion 4 Ventures. In a nutshell, we help PropTech scale to exit. Prior to that was the managing director of PropTech Group, listed on the stock exchange, exited last year.
Okay, and you love your technology.
And I love tech.
Okay.
Software engineer.
Software engineer by trade, which I think is important when we start to look at sort of the applicability of AI. And one of the interesting things is when you try to put together a panel around AI is what angle do you take? And I think what's important to me is you've got Nils, who's knee-deep in what it means day-to-day from a portal perspective, Nick, who's working at it from, well, what's it mean the off-market perspective, and how is social media thinking about AI, and how that can potentially change through the advertising channels, and then Joe's looking at it from more the technology, and from the investment perspective, what are the sort of PropTech companies that are going to be attractive as investments in the future, because they're the ones that's got the best chance of taking this AI tech and truly changing the outcome. So let's start with the internal view around AI first. How are PropTech companies starting to think about and apply AI type technologies to just making themselves far more efficient and effective in what they do? Nils, do you want to go first?
Yeah, with my software engineering hat on, I think we underestimate, we techies underestimate how that's really going to change the industry and software development as a whole. I think we should be more scared and worried about our jobs at the end of the day. Just 12 hours ago, I saw a beautiful tweet from a company called Cognition. They have now their first AI software developer, and that AI can develop better than a junior or mid-level developer. So what we said is going to happen in a couple of years is the reality now. So to answer the question maybe more directly, I think the question should be, how can you influence your software engineering teams to take advantage of what's available now already?
So what we're talking about here is AI is writing the code, or at least a code to a junior to mid-level developer level.
And like fully automated.
Fully automated.
So not like Copilot, where you need to basically get help from the AI, but fully automated. So no interference needed.
So the first opportunity here is reduction in the cost of your tech team. Okay. Second is improvement of the efficiency of the tech team. So you can now create far more applications, far more improvements to your existing products in a fraction of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And in tech, we're seeing, not just PropTechs, all companies, particularly starting in the QA space, so for code reviews, for the quality assurance testing, AI being prevalent there, but increasingly the actual development of the core languages are moving to AI, and that's as Neil said, a big change to the software development industry in general.
Okay, so if I'm running any sort of PropTech business, the actual underlying PropTech has been written by, could be written So it's just up to me to think about what direction I want it to go, where I think the best market opportunity is to lead that outcome. How are you then seeing AI being applied to, things like listing quality, et cetera? Are you seeing any sort of trends in that? Nick, from your perspective, you're seeing?
Yeah, we are. And just back on that last point, we're already using a lot of the AI tools to enhance the efficiencies of our development team, even at the most senior level, where they can actually get more efficiencies out of it as well. So from a code point of view, it's obviously a great benefit, but also to the point you're talking about with the listings, for us to make the listings, I guess, a lot more personalised. So when they're actually running, it's no longer just a one-size-fits-all approach. It's actually more about how can we actually personalise the listing content depending on the audience that we're trying to target.
Okay. I think an extension on that is particularly in this region where the quality of the listings could be substandard in many cases, and we all remember the old days of property portals where we spent a lot of time training people, agents, on how to write descriptions, how to add the bedrooms in the bedroom field, the car parks in the car park field. So a lot of that cleansing and cleansing of data can be automated now through AI, and those tools have been around for a while, but increasingly they're becoming a lot more popular, a lot more easy to implement.
So we're talking here about deduplication, fraud detection, but then also enhancement of the listings themselves.
Yeah, and even just verification of metadata. So, I'm sure we've all experienced where you do a search in a property portal, ask for 3 bedrooms, and you get a 2-bedroom property, and it's just because the person put in 3 accidentally in the bedroom field, but that hasn't been verified or qualified or checked. So the metadata down to the basic levels, and then to the auto enhancements, which we can talk about it in a moment, just leveraging off image-based AI as well as metadata AI.
Okay, and I think the interesting thing is, what does this mean for the new development industry? Okay, because if you think about it, it's a hole in the ground and an aspiration of a developer with a bunch of plans and a 1-bedroom example where you can sort of go in, what they call those places, where you can go and test the fittings and so on. How does AI change that game from the marketing of new developments? How do you think about that from a ringier perspective?
I don't think that's, again, not the direct answer, but I guess also when it comes to new development, lots of is dependent on search traffic and content marketing and the likes. I think if you don't automate it in 2024, you're definitely doing something wrong. When it comes to landing pages, the content of these, the creatives, all of that can be fully automated. You don't need teams for that. You set it up once and you create it way more efficiently. So I think, again, here with the marketing opportunity, I know a new development normally comes with a big marketing budget. So I think you can increase your margins almost dramatically if you automate that part.
And even like 3D floor plans, virtual tours, all of that side of it, it's really starting to get automated through the use of AI. Things that you could do if you had a connection with someone that had that technology, but now obviously AI is bringing that all and making it a lot more efficient for marketplaces.
It's an important point though for new developments, because a big chunk of their marketing budget was spent on that storytelling, the 3D models, the flybys, the area. A lot of that can be automated with tools now, so that a lot of that marketing dollars that were previously spent on creation of content can be funneled into property portals for the marketing, the actual true marketing of getting leads. So it's an opportunity for property portals to increase the monetization or increase the share of wallet of the marketing dollars, because developers can become more efficient in the way that they create content and create the storytelling.
This starts to lead to a very interesting path for me. 4 of us are sitting here, we might be looking at a new development, but we'll look at it from a different angle, for different perspectives. Maybe you need something for a new kid or whatever, and I'm looking for something for sports or whatever. And what triggers me falling in love with it, because that's really what you need to do at the end of the day to get someone to put their hand in their pocket and spend $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, is to have a degree of love with the outcome. How can AI help take what is fundamentally a development, something that's static, 50 floors and 5 apartments per floor or whatever it is, but make it dynamic in that it's how you see that advertisement and how I see the advertisement Now, everyone here sees it is 180 different ways of seeing the same advertisement. How can AI achieve that outcome for me?
Yes, I think it's the personalisation piece of understanding. I mean, obviously, and you know, we've spoken to a few people, I think last night as well, but it depends on the quality of the data available. But if we understand who those users are and you know, it might be their demographic data or it might be some other information, then we know how to actually change the approach in terms of what we're promoting to them about what could be, as you say, a very linear, you know, the property is a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or multiple apartments, but we're actually pinpointing certain elements of that for different audience groups. So it is dynamic in terms of how it's showing what ultimately is the same property.
And property portals are in a unique position. I keep going back to the portals because they've got first-party data. So they've got that preference data, they've got that profile already, and they can generate in real time using AI a specific visualization for me would be different for you, and using the assets that existed like the 3D tools, the flyovers, take elements of those and in real time create a narrative that's specific for me based on what they know about me and my usage.
And that's the
on
thing,
the site.
right? Because I want to be educated as a buyer. It's a significant decision, right? For the average person on this planet, they're going to pay back that loan over 10, 15, 20 years. And typically you're not educated enough to make the right decision. You know, is the new development, do I really want to buy there? How about the yield? How about the return on invest? And. And I think with AI, we've got now really, when it comes to personalization, the opportunity to feed that, educate the buyer at the end of the day.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. So when you think about that personalization of the outcome, the personalization of the interaction, it raises a couple of questions. One is, how do you know what to personalize for me? And I had a conversation with Frederick from PropTech Farm yesterday. He was talking about, well, if you look at his social media, he's looking at Liverpool Football Club and Formula One. So that's all he gets back. But it doesn't know anything else about him because it just happens to be how he interacts with whatever the application is, the time, and what's the topic. How does it find out more about you than just how you've interacted?
So I've got a view on this which may not be a common view, but AI can ask you now, whereas it couldn't in the past. So generative AI, conversational AI. I was saying to Nick earlier, a friend of mine started, not in the same industry, but has started an interviewing tool which is launching in job tech. And it's essentially an AI tool that asks you in real time questions, 4 or 5 questions, and it's dynamically creating those questions. So the progressive profile through conversation, whether it's a chatbot or actually speaking to an AI tool, can collect data in an explicit way and augment that with the implied behavioural-based traits. So what are they searching for, what are they clicking on, and then asking, what are you actually looking for, what do you actually want, and storing that in a digital form that can then be used to progressively profile and then personalise.
Nick, you deal in the social media world, right, where there's a lot of access to information about my preferences, my likes, my friends' likes, who I make friends with, and so on, right? You get a much better view of me as an individual than, you know, interacting with a property portal or another piece of PropTech. How is social media thinking about using AI to really even further customize that experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I mean, obviously Meta, I think everyone knows, you know, is already using a lot of AI in their background, and that's obviously for their own use. The way that we get access to it is by virtue of some of that audience, I guess those audience insights that come back from those different segments. Some of it is by virtue of the platform, but some of it is inputs, a bit like Joe was talking about earlier in terms of if you've got that first-party data as a marketplace and we'll be able to push that data in as well, we're taking multiple data points to then be able to pull that together to create the experience. That's a lot more personalised. So it's not just one source of truth, so to speak, it's multiple sources of data to enhance, you know, that experience, both at a personalised level within a channel. It may be that we've got enough information to be down to sort of person level, or it may be that if it's actually a tier up or a couple of tiers up, it might actually be that it's at a channel level where we're rewriting content for different channels based on information that we have available.
Although eventually that content will become absolutely unique to you as the individual.
Yes.
And by the way, open up the Q&A if you want to join the conversation, ask questions, guide the conversation in an area that's interesting for you. Ask a question, it comes up here, I can then redirect the conversation overall. If you don't ask questions, I'm going to take it the way I want to take it.
Okay? If you allow me one point, sorry to interrupt, but when it comes to personalization, social media, all of that, I think what's often underestimated is the impact of data protection laws. No one really thinks about that. So we develop our things and let the tech guys try, but is it actually legal what we're doing? But then also, what is maybe even more underestimated, we feed, once again, just like we did with Meta and the likes, we feed again the OpenAIs of the world, we feed them our data. And we opt in that they are allowed to use our data. And again, that's the difficulty, right? Like, can we even do that? Am I allowed to almost resell or refeed my users' data? Most likely not. So again, like it's also on a governmental level. In most locations, it's not like decided at all. What the EU came up with is, I think, pretty bold. Like as a first step, it came maybe almost a bit premature. But again, like no one really thinks about the implication of data protection.
But do you think that the emergence of AI makes it more possible for me to own my data as an individual and provide individual explicit permission on a per case-by-case basis? So what I'm trying to say, in the past is we relied on the portals or the sites that we're dealing with to use our data appropriately. I think the emergence of AI makes it easier for me to actually own my data points and transfer it in a way that is anonymised but secure. And I think we'll see a world in terms of data protection where I can actually dictate as an individual that my data can be used for this specific purpose at this specific time.
Yeah.
Now, we've recently seen OpenAI launch Sora. I don't know if you've seen Sora, where it's the for those who haven't seen Sora, it is an example of where you no longer need any film industry, basically. You don't need any more writers, you don't need directors, you don't need producers, you don't need anyone, right? You just literally put a suggestion into the AI engine and it will produce film, high quality digital film that they believe is now at a level where it can produce the mainly consumed like daytime soap operas. Okay, that's how advanced it is. Clearly, you need a heap of servers and silicon to make it happen, right? And server farms from here to who knows where. But if you think about what that means, is that I can now go from customizing the advertisement and some of the images that you see based on your requirement to now I can really personalize it into a 30-second TikTok ad that you are the only person in the world that's ever going to see that ad, and it's going to hit all your buttons. How much of an opportunity is that, and how dangerous is that? Who wants to have a crack at it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll crack. Yeah, so I mean, it's the ability to be able to produce video on the fly. I mean, we do some of that already now using those type of tools, not exactly that one, but others. So being able to do that in a practical sense where the video content might not be available makes it relevant, and that's being done today. So you know, that's a real scenario. Not sure about long-form content, obviously like what it's available to now do, but certainly in short-form content we can do that now, and that also helps where that information isn't available via a feed or via sort of client-side components. We can I guess decorate that with pre-produced or produced on-the-fly content in video, in static, in various formats.
That's platform appropriate.
Specific,
so how it's done for TikTok will be different for how it's done for Instagram versus YouTube or whatever.
Yes. Correct.
But there's a computational cost to it too, and I think that's where it gets interesting, is if you're doing this for every single person, for every single visit, every single time, all of a sudden your infrastructure costs skyrocket. So I think that it's finding that balance between getting the right return. So for social media it makes sense. If I'm just browsing, perhaps it doesn't.
So I've been so excited about technology in the 90s when I dialed up my modem and I had access to so much information. I think what we're experiencing now is a mindset shift for the whole of humanity, right? The only limitation really is the creativity and maybe cost for the computing power. But I think it's going to change all our industries, right? Like static workflows are not needed anymore. You don't need to brief engineering teams, design teams, film producing teams. But the only thing you need to do is to have that idea and a good prompt, and the machine is going to take care of it. It's amazing.
So then the question is, what is our role as both consumers and producers of content in the future? Do we have a role? Or does everything get done for us and we're just literally plugged into the matrix and we'll just consume it subconsciously.
You'll be trained on how to prompt. We'll all be very good at prompting.
So asking the right questions.
Asking the right questions to get the right
of whatever AI interface you're dealing with. Can we bring up the questions, please, just from the background here? A couple of questions come up. Would you agree that the next wave of innovation in portals will mostly be driven by newcomers who are AI focused from the beginning rather than the incumbent players?
It's a good question. I think Nils is probably best placed to answer. I think given the barrier to experimentation is so low, I don't necessarily think it's going to be driven fundamentally by new players. I think there's enough scope for existing players to try in certain segments, and that it's likely to be the innovation coming from within, is my personal view.
I would also, so in theory, yes, because the huge advantage is you can start from zero, no legacy systems at all. So my personal approach for our technology is to reset every 5 years. Everything that older than 5 years you need to throw out, or you're not flexible enough. I think that has changed now to 5 months, and maybe soon it's only 5 days, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the reality is you can also take advantage of your branding and all of that, so and your monies, yeah.
Do you think, I was reflecting back to Malcolm's presentation, and he was almost playing back time, right? And he had this one slide, it's early on the presentation, about everything, from talking about getting close to the transaction, and then all these things that came and went over time. Is this another one of them? Or is this fundamentally going to change what we do?
I think it's, I don't think it'll come and go. I think it's here to stay. It's more about how it's embraced. I mean, I know when all of these things come to market, everyone sort of, there's panic mode, and there's, how quickly do we need to embrace? I think there's a lot of time still to be had. There's a lot of exploring. We were talking earlier as well, certain things can't be done so much in real time because, well, certainly from an advertising point of view, because the delay in the response is maybe not as quick as it needs to be just yet. So there'll be some improvements that are going to come over time. My personal view is I think it's certainly here to stay, and it'll be embraced by different organisations at different levels as they see appropriate.
Yeah, I do agree. I think, though, the previous question, I was just reflecting on it. I think the incumbents have so much money tied up in their existing business models, okay, that they will be thinking about how to use AI internally, which is one of the questions here, actually the one at the top there, rather than public-facing. Because as soon as you go public-facing, the capacity for you to truly provide... Now, the ultimate is Joe's moving house. There is actually a house he's going to end up buying. If I know what that house is, and I can put it in front of him, there's a chance he'll just tick the box and move super quick. The problem is that's this missed advertising opportunity.
Yeah, so I think that the broader question is, as an industry, particularly if you focus on property portals, is the business model the right one? And we know from our own experience, it's becoming increasingly about the efficiency of the connection, the efficiency of the match, which is a very different proposition to a walled garden, look at every house, irrespective if it's the house you actually want, because I make money from advertising. I think if the business model moves to the direction of efficiency through connections, then that'll support the emergence of the tech to follow.
Could AI actually disrupt the portal industry completely? So if you think about it at the moment, we'll take Rightmove for as an example, right? I go to Rightmove because they've gone to the effort of aggregating all the data. Then you had the Machulas and Trovits of the world that came around. They aggregated the data just through different channels, direct and indirectly, from the original advertiser. But with AI sitting over the top, has that got the capacity to ask the question, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in Chiswick in England, and I want to spend £500,000 or whatever the number is. It gets those listings. It then filters them for you based on what it knows about you, your social media, and so on, and presents the 3. And before you know it, Rightmove and everyone's sort of bypassed, and it goes direct to the property, still the agent, because I think people will be so scared of selling their home by themselves, because it's their biggest ticket item, and when you're dealing with something so big, fear of the industry's good at creating enough fear that you use them for it. Could that just bypass the complete industry?
And I think the question is, what's the user interface for that? And maybe we really do need Apple, just like in the 2 last iterations, to change user behavior through the iPhone and the whole world. Maybe it really is the Vision Pro, where we interact different with interfaces, with data. We can use the data different to show it the consumer. So yeah, maybe we need Apple, hey?
Yeah. And I certainly think it's possible. And you remove the aspirational component of looking at property for the lifestyle aspirational.
But there's no value in those.
There's no value in that.
There's no value in those users, right?
But to find the property, I'd much rather be pinged with a message saying a property's entered the market that matches your criteria. Would you like to look at it? It's a much better experience as a consumer.
So it's a way in which can take the stress and reduce the time, and both time into search and the wasted time at looking at the properties that don't
definitely agree.
Truly match the outcome. The problem is I can't see the existing players doing that. But the biggest challenge I see to that outcome is brand, right? Brand in the consumer's mind. And could a CoStar do it? Could a CoStar with a big marketing budget and an aggressive mindset and a different business model, not just doing the same and trying to take number 3 to number 1, achieve that outcome?
Time's up. I could talk about this for hours. I think definitely, and I personally think with the right business model, so again, imagine efficiency of the connection and efficiency of the sale, and you're less concerned with advertising revenue and more concerned with success-based share of commission, then yeah, why wouldn't a CoStar look at doing it? It would make perfect sense for me.
Yeah. And I think the challenge is also not over-personalising, because I know that obviously there's lots of revenue models that would turn a lot of the revenue down when you over-personalise the experience as well. So there's obviously a challenge out there in terms of, from a marketplace point of view, of how far do you go with this. I've come from a news background originally before in classifieds, and it got over-personalised. That was sort of something we did a joint venture with out of the US. It came in, it was very, very personalised, but the problem was then the people that are curating this content that actually want to expose you to broader things disappeared, and we quickly realised that model wasn't sustainable, so it went back to curated content.
Okay, last question before we go. Do you see a future where generative AI can advertise to an individual in a way that they grow the idea that they want to move to a new home? So it's actually seeding the idea and playing with your almost manipulating you to an outcome.
My view is manipulation, probably not, but generative AI makes it possible and feasible for you to remain in contact with a person during their life journey and be there at the time where it makes sense for them to move. Does that make sense? So that it's hard for a broker or an agent to call every 6 months. Hi, have you had another baby? Do you need it? But through technology, through AI, you could keep that conversation and that progressive profiling alive, which then there's signals of likely being inducible to move based on lifestyle and life events.
But I think you touched on an interesting point. AI has the capacity to on Facebook, you've just announced that you're going to have a baby.
Correct.
Right? And it then starts the drip process. Well, have you thought about a new home? Do you need to renovate? Do you need to remodel? Maybe you should move. Have you thought about moving to this school district? Because we know how much you earn. We know
based on your LinkedIn, and we just got a new job, and blah, 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 blah.
Exactly, yeah. And I think this is the real interesting opportunity, is taking all those data points, understanding your true age and stage of life, understanding where you're currently living. I know you live at 123 Baker Street, right? I know that house is a 2-bedroom house, and you're just having your second kid. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it has that capacity. So I think my answer to the question is yes. But let's not kid ourselves. We're manipulated every single day to buy crap we don't need, right? Isn't this just an extension of that?
I think so.
Okay, but before we wrap up, just a parting thought. If you look back over time, take the start of advertising in newspapers to today, there's really been one major change, which was going from print to digital. Okay, everything else is sort of, in my perspective, I think incremental moves around it. Is AI the next big one? And if so, what we saw in the print digital age is the print guys forever holding the tide back, right? To the point then they lost the game. And if AI is the next one, the fundamental change, not just a little blip in the outcome, will that have the same impact on the existing incumbent leaders, the Rightmoves, the REAs, the Scout 24s, and so on? Last thought.
So I think it's going to change fundamentally. Why? Because what you said earlier with video generation. Because you're going to see a very different advertisement to mine because it is created on the fly, right? Because it knows what I like. It knows when I want to buy that cup of coffee or the house. And that's why I see very different personalized content. And I think that is exactly that is the change, right? It's not a newspaper where you have to try to cover with one picture 1 million people, but it's not really individually for you.
Yeah, I think if I add to that, I mean, I think I guess if you look back, like you mentioned, and you look at, migrating from print to digital, and a lot of those, they didn't embrace it quick enough, and the pure plays came in and took the market share. I mean, that was, are we playing in the digital space or are we not? I think this one can be done at so varying levels that you can sort of almost up your use of AI or down as you need it. So, I feel like it's slightly different. So I think you get a bit more choice now as opposed to I'm either in or I'm out.
And for me, I think it's yes and yes. So it will be the most significant change and be more impactful than the transition from print to online. And it will force portals to rethink their business model away from cast your net wide to find a efficiency of match.
Yep.
And I think that would have a massive impact on the way we find properties in the future.
Okay, so the message that I remember giving to newspaper guys back in 2000 was embrace or die.
Yep.
I think the same message exists today.
Yep.
To the Rightmoves, the REAs, the big guys of the world, embrace or die. And then we can have a conversation another time about, can they embrace? Do they have the right corporate attitude? Are they innovative? And so on and so on and so on. Or are they so entrenched and locked into their current business models that they're actually screwed and they don't know it? Okay? For a conversation for a later time. Okay, thanks everyone. I hope that was interesting to walk through what could be happening from an AI perspective. And gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.